Danger, welcome back to This Is Horror.
Yeah, great to be here once again. The triumphant return.
Yeah, and I was looking at how long it had been, and I can't believe it, but it has been 5 years
Yeah,
since we last spoke to you.
we had a
So
whole pandemic
I
during
know,
that time.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, usually I ask what have been the biggest changes personally and professionally. So aside from the pandemic, what's been going on these last 5 years? For you, not
Oh,
not reviewing the entire world.
you don't want to hear my thoughts on the Middle East right now? Is that
I don't think that's why people tune in, but
fair
they'll
enough? Fair
correct
enough.
me if in fact I'm wrong.
No, I've just been. I actually had the pandemic was actually kind of the world slowed down, so I actually got a lot of writing done during that time. I know it was pretty chaotic for a lot of people, myself included, but I thrive in chaos apparently, because I wrote like 2 or 3 books in that first like year and a half. So I was kind of, and they're all just coming out now. Like Starlet, which was my last book, is the last one of those pandemic books that I wrote to come out.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of writers, they seem to give quite a similar response. I mean, they're reticent to say it was a good pandemic for them. That's
Yeah.
not quite the terminology to use, but
You,
when you're
you saw me
forced,
pull it back a little bit too. I
yeah,
was like, yeah, it was great. I mean, not great, but no, I personally had was okay. So it was an okay time in a very creative time. So luckily, we get to come out of that with something.
yeah, and you said Starlet was the last book that you wrote during the pandemic. So in terms of the other
Yeah.
two, are either of them out now, or are they forthcoming?
No, well, Star's the last one to be released. So the other ones have all come out already. So there was House of Rot, which came out last year from Tenebris Press that I wrote during the pandemic as well. I basically wrote these 2 books back to back, like in a six
Yeah,
month span. So before I was
yeah.
like, oh shit, I got to go back to work. like, in those few months where I was just sitting around the house.
Yeah, and I mean, House of Rot in particular, I can see how that could be a kind of pandemic book. I mean, you've got this new, these people, this couple, Elena and Miles, and they've got this new house, but the drawback is that there is pink mold growing on everything, and we
Yeah.
really do mean everything. And because it's such a self-contained book, I mean, it does have that claustrophobic element that, we were enduring during the pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I know that book is a little gross, like with all the body rotting stuff and kind of surreal, but I'm going to say it's about 70% like based off of what was going on in my life at the time. We actually had a mold problem while we were trapped inside. So this was like something that we were going through.
Yeah. So was the genesis of that book, House of Rot, essentially your own mold problem, or what were the ingredients that meant that this came together?
Yeah, it was 100% like my my I don't even know what happened. Like one day I get out of bed. I'm like, oh, it's a little humid in here in the apartment. I live in the Pacific Northwest in America, so it is it's kind of a temperate rainforest. They say it's very wet 6 months of the year, very humid, like 100% humidity. It's raining all the time, so it is kind of ripe for things to turn green and just keep growing. You look outside and houses are just covered in moss and mold and stuff because it is just wet all the time. And it's very beautiful. Everything, like the city itself, is very much nature oriented and allowing this kind of greenness to happen. The thing is, you don't want it inside your house growing all over your couch and in your cabinets and on your cat tree and on your bed and pretty much everywhere. Uh, And that's kind of what happened one day. I guess we hit a critical mass when it came to humidity in the apartment. And it just kind of, we didn't have a dehumidifier, which we've since gotten, but it, it just sprung up on everything, including on my back. Yeah, I had mold on my back. Well, not necessarily mold, but I went to I got these splotches on my back, and I was like, "What is that?" I said to my girlfriend, I was like, "I saw noticed this when I was going in the shower. There's these dark, kind of brown splotches." So she took a Sharpie and outlined it. She'd be like, "Cool, let's see like if it's changing shape or what it's doing." So over the next like couple weeks, it's like getting bigger, and I'm like, "What the fuck?" So I eventually go to the doctor. I'm like, "Do I have cancer? Like, what is happening?" Like, like that's obviously what everyone jumps to. Like, something is wrong with my skin right now. And she said to me, she said surfers tend to get it. It was a kind of, because they're wet, all the surfers get it because they're wet all the time. She said it was a kind of sun surf skin fungus growing on me. It wasn't like mushrooms or nothing, but you don't want to hear that you have a fungus or something on your back.
No, no, that is not what you want to hear in any situation. I can't think of a single scenario where that
Yeah.
is an advantageous thing to be told.
You didn't
But
like run into like a meteor or anything, did you?
I mean, it could have been. It was a pretty loud neighborhood, so I might not have even noticed.
Yeah, you might have touched some of that meteor shit, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
see, I
It like turned out we had so this building we lived in was this old building. It was built in, not old, but it was built in the 60s. It was a bit of like a cheap building from the 60s, right? Like so it wasn't built to last whatever this is, 60 years down the line. So it was like sinking into this, because it's very, wet also, and it was on this hill, and it was sinking into the hill, so it was uneven. So when it would rain, all the water would run and then leak from our window into our apartment. So our apartment would fill up with water, and it would it would get into the carpet in the bedroom, and it turned into this standing water that was apparently under the building itself. That was just this like disgusting cess filled swamp that probably never dried for years. And that is where all this stuff was coming from. Like, it was coming up from underneath the apartment. And when our apartment inside got too humid, it just sprouted on everything spontaneously one day. This like what I'm talking about. This book, like if you've read House of Rot, this is like what happens in the book. It's like exactly that. Like was our ridiculous place we used to live.
Yeah, so at what point did you move out of this place? I mean,
Oh
I
my
mean,
god.
for me, at the point where mold is growing
Yeah.
on me, I mean, that feels like it should be many steps ahead.
Yeah.
It shouldn't get to that point, but
Yeah.
when did you move out? And logistically, how easy was that? Because obviously there are financial considerations, there are agreements in place. I mean, one would hope that the agreements does have a caveat that when there is more mold than there is living space, you can move
Dude,
out.
they did not care. They didn't care about the fact that there's this water under the building, that the foundations were cracking. They We had a friend that also lived in the building with us, and she reported them to the city, who came and inspected it and said, "Oh, your foundation's cracking, your building's sinking, and you need to fix it or we're going to fine you." And they said, "Fine us, because it's cheaper than fixing the building." So that's when we were like, they don't give a shit about us and our situation and what's going on here. So we moved as soon as we could, which was a few months later, about 3 blocks away, because we liked the neighborhood. So we literally were like carrying our stuff to a new apartment down the street.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've had a number of mold problems when living in places in the UK, although oddly enough, in Japan, which is a much more humid country, I haven't had the level of mold problems that I have in the UK. And I think probably it's because it's so humid in Japan that they just have to make things that are kind of built to withstand that and to not descend into absolute fungal chaos. And I guess the negative of the properties in Japan is it means that they're not very good at retaining heat in the winter. So, that is like a negative, but the positive is there isn't mold everywhere. And with each property that I've had a mold problem, I've learned a little bit more as to how to manage it. So then I've kind of, the first one of obviously getting the dehumidifier, but then, I had a small dehumidifier to begin with, just one of those mini ones because, they're far cheaper, but it was filling up so quickly that we then got an industrial one, and it's like, God, we're kind of going through that every
Yeah.
day. How much moisture is in this apartment?
Mhm.
Like it never grew on me, thank goodness. But yeah, there was one place that I lived in Coventry, which isn't a great place to live to begin with. So adding mold to the mix is even worse. But yeah, just like it was going through my clothes. Like, I had like some decent leather jackets, some blazers, and then they're just turning into a coat of mold. And rather than proudly embracing it, I did throw them out and move
Yeah.
property. But yeah, what?
We lost a lot of stuff from that
Yeah.
exact thing, including, and this is going to be of interest to nobody but you, possibly Michael, but including all my Guinness Book of Records got
I knew we
taken
were
over by
going
the
there.
mold, and I had to toss them all because they got eaten.
Oh,
They got eaten apart. Yeah.
yeah. So,
My-
for people who haven't listened to the first episode, we did discuss the fact that every year your mother would buy you a copy of the Guinness Book of Records for
yeah.
Christmas. And is that still an ongoing concern? Is she still buying you them? Did she hear about the mold problem and now you get like every year one new book and one classic from the past to kind of
Uh,
get the collection back?
to be perfectly honest, did she send me one last year? I don't think she sent me one last year.
Oh no.
I don't
The
know.
streak
I don't
is
know.
over.
I know it's over.
Mhm. Mm-mm-mm.
I told her what happened. I'm like, I had to toss them all, and I think she was just like, I think it demoralized her more than it demoralized me. She was just like, "Well, couldn't you clean them?" I'm like, "Mom, they're made of paper. Like, there's nothing you could do. Like, the mushrooms have won."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mold is. I mean, and where you're at is probably because it's green. It seems like it's just part of the thing. I know, years ago we had in Texas like a black mold, epidemic, and that stuff's toxic. And I was actually working for an insurance agent at the time, not to drag this out, but people were filing claims on that to get thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, and just making bank and getting their houses, like being able to move and get an entire house rebuilt or build a brand new house. It's so much so that they no longer really cover mold anymore because so many people were like, oh, I've got black mold. And all you had to have was just like one little section and it's, yep, it's toxic. And there you go. And then you have a claim. And so now you have to get like specific riders and stuff like that. But mold, especially in extremely wet situations, I've had to throw away books, jackets. I had a jacket looked like it had feathers on it when I finally
Ugh.
got to it. Yeah, it's just, and this was black mold. So it's like you didn't even want to touch it.
Yeah.
It was just rancid, leaking black sludge. It's just nasty shit.
I mean, it's shocking to me, and this is why I wrote this book too. This is like a horror thing for me. Obviously, just watching my possessions get taken over with like mold is horrifying. But like how quickly it happens, and how unstoppable nature is when it decides to turn on you is like, there's nothing we could do to have stopped it, right? Like, and the fact that we have the dehumidifier going and it's like not flourishing, it is just sitting there waiting for the the humidity in the apartment to rise so it could come back. Like, it is not, it's still there, even though we've gotten rid of it, even though we've moved, like, it's still everywhere. And like, it can come back at any time if we're like not vigilant, and like nature will like win eventually too. If the power went out, we couldn't run a dehumidifier. Like, it would be over.
It's just waiting for a warm house to live.
It's already in the house. The call's coming from inside the house.
Wow.
Ugh.
Yeah, when I had the mold problem, I wrote a short story based on it. I didn't go as far as to write an entire book. I wrote this kind of cosmic horror short story in which the protagonist just gets slowly consumed and obsessed by this spiraling patch of mold that gets out of control. But to go for the whole book, that's a commitment, but it's also, I wouldn't expect anything less from you, Danger, to go that route.
Well, there's like, I mean, there's a lot. It's like it is nature taking over, and it's this kind of unstoppable thing. But it's also a failure of capitalism. Is the reason that this is happening? It's because this building needs to be remediated and taken care of, and they're not doing it. And because we didn't have money, we moved to this building that we thought was a good value, but it was a good value because it's a piece of shit. And they're taking advantage of us, and the fact that we didn't have the means to get out immediately or sue them or do anything. And it is these companies, it was an apartment building owned by a property management company that owns 60 properties. So it owns thousands and thousands of apartments, like single unit apartments. There's thousands and thousands of people giving them thousands of dollars every single month. Like, where is all that money going? Because it ain't to upkeeping our living space. Like, it's not treating us like people. It's treating us like the commodity to give them money. And it is, I mean, this is all kind of baked into the book. It's not what the book is necessarily about, but it's about, a couple that wants to believe in this American dream or whatever it is. If you work hard, you get to go ahead and you could start your life and buy a house and buy all these things that they promised you. And it's just like, they can't even get out of their own apartment.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I mean, whenever we see what looks to be too good to be true, or we see like a property and we think, what's the catch? Even if we can't see the catch initially, 99.9% there is a catch. And it's like, well, we can either ignore it or we can move in and we will eventually find out what the catch is. But
when we got our new place, we specifically looked for one that wasn't a part of a giant corporation like that. Like, I mean, there's like maybe, I don't know, 100 units in this building that I currently live in, but it's only owned by one family. This is their property that they run. And so they are spending anything that they need to spend money on is going to be specifically here. It's not like, we have 1,000 places, so it doesn't matter if one place sucks. Like, let's not worry about it. Like, so it is a little bit better, but we also do pay about $400 more a month than we used to.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of your writing, you said that you wrote, 3 books during the pandemic. Now that you're back to your original or your more kind of normal routine, what is that looking like, and how many books do you have now that are ready to go, that are waiting for publishers or waiting for publication?
Well, it certainly slowed down. Now that I have, like I just said, we spend $400 more a month on this apartment. My car broke at the kind of coming out of COVID too. So I had to buy a new car, not a new car, but a new used car that I'm paying off right now. And so my bills pretty much doubled than what they were like 3 or 4 years ago. So I actually have to spend a lot more time doing an actual job. Not that writing isn't an actual job, but it is the most inconsistent way to make money you could possibly have. Like you might have or I might have a good month here and there. You might do a convention and make a lot of money. You might get your first royalty on a book that comes out and it did okay. But like then there'll be months of nothing. So I've had to kind of shift my focus into side hustling to kind of make up the difference. So I've been doing a lot of animal care. I do babysit. I dog sit and cat sit and dog walk. So it works well with the writing schedule because I can make my own schedule. But I do spend like 5 hours a day with random pets, like walking around town and yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of the writing, I mean, but both you and I, neither of us are known for writing these commercial money selling ideas that the New York Times are going to lap up, or
Yeah.
Hollywood will be like, yeah, that's the next superhero franchise. I mean, I wish they would. It would be amazing if they did that with Starlet, for example. But I mean, when you're looking to publish a book, I mean, what considerations do you have in terms of which press to go to or how to give it its best opportunity?
I well, I've been lucky with Starlet and a book called Moonfellows that came out before it. That was kind of in 2021, I think, or 2022. But um, to have connected with Max Booth at Ghoulish, which I know you've both worked with also. But they are a great person to just kind of, you know, I'm lucky because I consider Max a friend. So if I finish something, I could go to them personally and say, "Are you into this idea?" I think that at this point, uh, I've been writing for a long time. I've been writing for publishing and writing for about 15 years. I've been writing for longer, obviously, but in dealing with publishing and indie publishing and all these in these companies and that have come and gone and stuff. So it's nice to kind of rely sometimes on these past relationships I've built to kind of just have a starting point of where to jump off from. I could talk to Max, and now I'm good with Tenebrous Press too, who put out House of Rot, and I could kind of come to them when I have an idea or I'm finishing something and say, "Is this something that you would be interested in? What does your publishing schedule look like?" Which is good because beyond that, I'm at a loss like everybody else.
Yeah, would you ever consider putting things out independently, or is that kind of unviable because of the financial considerations that you have to put in initially, or perhaps just, because if you're with a small press, you've at least got a marketing team. And not
Yeah,
always, but with some small presses, with Max, certainly, Max and Laurie put a lot of effort, and now Mindy as well, into making
yeah.
sure that book is promoted and, will do as well as possible.
I'm definitely not against the idea. I just haven't wanted to learn how to do that because I'm very not interested in that side of the writing thing. I don't really want to even know as much about publishing as I already know. I would love to just make books and not think about anything else in the entire thing. I would love to not even have to be on Twitter and talk about it. It would be great to be famous enough and have a readership enough that I don't even have to scream my own name over and over again to get people to pay attention to me. It's not exactly where where I'm at, or most people are at, but it is not something that I've had to do yet. So it's not an avenue I've really looked at. If I got to a point where I needed to, the books are still coming. They're still coming out of me. And there is going to come a point where I am going to have more books than I will know people who could help me get them published. And something's going to have to break. So it's either they're never going to see the light of day, or I will need to figure out how to some other way of getting them out into the world.
Yeah, and you mentioned working with Tenebrous Press on House of Rot. So how did it come about that you connected with the people at Tenebrous? And then logistically, what did that look like working with them, both in terms of the editorial and then the marketing of the book?
Yeah, well, they were new. They kind of came out of the pandemic too. They were a kind of a new press back then, and I normally wouldn't even like I normally be a little more wary of a brand new press. Not that there's not a lot of great presses that are new, but it's hard to, as an artist, go here, take something that I spent a lot of time and put a lot of myself into, completely unproven, untested entity who could completely fuck up this release. You know, you guys could shutter in a two months from now, and then my book is orphaned, and I don't know what the hell to do. Like, so there's a lot of kind of trust that you need to put into who you work with. And even though Tenebrous was new, I kind of liked what they were doing. And the fact that this is just a lucky happenstance, but the fact that Matt, one of the two people that own it, it lives in Portland also, that we got to meet up and actually connect in person. And it makes a huge world of difference in the amount of not that someone you meet in person can't be a fuck up, but it makes a huge difference in the amount of trust that you can put in somebody when they are more than just an avatar on your computer screen, when they are an actual in the flesh human being that you've interacted with and said things to. And I've really liked what they had done, and I think I was right, because they're doing great, and their books continue to be great and be really kind of interesting. And the fact that they wanted to publish something by me, I'm not what you would call traditional horror. So it's sometimes a little difficult to find my people. But there's like the weirdos out there, like people like Max, people like Tenebrous, that are kind of actively encouraging this kind of horror.
Yeah, yeah, I certainly relate to what you're saying in terms of like just trying to find where to even place my own work because it doesn't neatly fit into a genre. It doesn't even really neatly fit into a subgenre. So I kind of feel almost in the Joe R. Lansdale vein, you just have to keep writing enough and then show, look, that the brand or the genre is me. It's a
Yeah.
unique kind of quirky thing, and either you're going to get on with it or you're not. But, it's about finding the people who do get on with it and then slowly building your audience or your tribe, as it were. But there's no path for people who are writing about jellyfish DNA, and it's like that's the magic bullet to get to get the audience.
I know. I know. I feel myself hitting glass walls in every direction I turn, and I'm just like, it's like walking through like like one of those hall of mirrors, right? You keep thinking this is the way, and then it's not, and then you go, let me pivot and try this way, and then it's not. And there is a way through, but it involves smashing your face into that glass over and over and over again. Um, which is where I am in my career. I'm in the bloody broken nose part of my career, I guess.
But you're in the best place, because if you're gonna, the only way you're gonna be able to stand out is to literally stand out. I mean, every one of the iconic writers that, if you look through history, even looking at Shirley Jackson with, Haunting a Hill House, there was nothing like that when that book came out. Nothing. It stood out like a sore thumb, and look where it's at now. You know, Same thing with Clive Barker. There was nothing like Clive Barker out when it happened. When Books of Blood came out, and so that's the only way that anybody's going to be able to get any kind of traction, is to make sure that what you're doing it stands out. It's fearless. It's rubs against the grain. And to me, that's just exciting. I love reading it. I love the thrill of actually being able to create it. And when it hits, it hits. And when it doesn't, it doesn't. You just keep going. You just keep trying until you get it right.
Yeah, one of the things that I look for in art, and be it movies or books or anything, is that element of like it delivering, not surprise necessarily, but it delivering something unexpected to me. Like, and that could just come because it's doing what it's doing really good. It's unexpectedly better. It's an unexpectedly great horror book or whatever, instead of just being a regular horror book or an average horror book. Or you read a horror book and then it starts making left turns or something, and you're like, oh, I had no idea where this was going to go. And it's like a fun roller coaster now where I'm on for the ride. And that is like, it's hard to say exactly what that thing is because it's going to be different for everything. But that element of just like, I don't know what is going to happen makes art exciting. And that's kind of where I'm trying to do in my own way, to to some degrees of success and some lesser degrees of success. Like, but when I sit down to write, I'm very much like, what is the story that only I could tell in the way I could tell it? Whether people are going to get on board with that or not, I don't have any control over. All I could do is try to do it as good as I can, and then do my best to put it in front of as many people as I can.
Which I think lends itself nicely to discussing your latest book, Starlet. So, I mean, to begin with, can you give our audience the elevator pitch?
Yeah, it's about a young lady who recently moved to Hollywood, who wants to be a movie star, who bumps into a kind of fading A-list star, a Army Hammer type, let's say, and who takes a shine to her and invites her back to his mansion, and things get very weird from there.
Right. When I was trying to explain it to someone, I said it's kind of the Neon Demon meets A Night Out with Army Hammer. I mean, that seemed to be the best kind of concise way of putting it. And I mean, of course, there's an awful lot of humor and violence and shock value to it, but when you dig deeper, it really is a critique on celebrity and Hollywood and both the desperation and exploitation within the film industry.
Yeah, or I mean, any artist too. It happens in books and writing as well. But
Yeah.
it doesn't with books and stuff. It doesn't have that kind of gloss of like you have to actually also look good to do it. Like you could, writers could look like whatever. Like we're behind a page. Like so, but like when it comes to the movies and stuff, it's also that like shine of like you need to look like a specific thing in order for it to even start to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And was Army Hammer a direct influence on this? I mean, when you read about, the stories of Army, which I mean, for people who aren't aware, you could give them a quick introduction as to what was suggested about Mr. Hammer.
Yeah, I mean that was the jump off. That was the that was kind of happening when it's old news at this point, but it was happening like 3 or 4 years ago when I was actually writing the book. But essentially, Army. If you don't know who Army Hammer is, he was kind of this. I don't want to say bland, but he is just like so prototypical movie star looking that he doesn't even physically stand out in anybody's mind. It's so he's got one of those like just like blank guy faces, just like handsome but blank. And so he's kind of like had this weird career where they've been trying to like make him a star, but it's never quite popped off for him. And then come to find out, while all this was going on, he's been kind of indulging in really weird psychosexual cannibalistic fetish videos, or not videos, chats with some of his fans through Instagram and a whole bunch of other weird shit with his family. And they're just like freaks. Essentially, they're weirdos and creeps. And I was like, just looking at this guy, like, I'm just like, he's been given all these chances and he's never quite popped, and he's got all the looks and he's still a fucking creep, right? Like, he should be happy that he won the lottery of life. Essentially, he was born with every advantage you could possibly have, and then ends up being like the worst person. And maybe that is feeding that fire to a degree, maybe because you have everything, you're like, what else is there? And that is kind of what it is. This young actress who doesn't understand the Hollywood machine, she goes up to this guy's house where he invites over a couple of his other friends, his other Hollywood elite friends, and they all are kind of weirdos. And they all are they need to exploit and use her. I don't want to give too much away, but they need to use her to kind of keep themselves going.
Yeah, and even pre the meeting, I mean, when they notice each other, the protagonist Deja is quite enamored by Brandon Bowers, who is the Army Hammer stand-in, and such a movie star name as well, Brandon Bowers.
Yeah.
But I mean, early on, it starts off with the exchange of some photographs, but pretty soon into it, she finds out that he enjoys indulging in sexual practices with bits of meat,
Yeah.
including that there's a picture that she shows, I believe, to one of her friends to almost be like, is this normal? This is like him like inserting himself in a filet mignon, which around here is not normal. I don't know about in Portland. Maybe it
Yeah.
is, but
No, we use Beyond Meat here. That's what we're having
okay.
sex with.
Is ethically sourced then?
Yeah.
Impossible burger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reminds me of a line at some point in the book, which I'll give no context to so that it doesn't explain it, but somebody indulges in a little bit of cannibalism adjacent behavior, and then someone else is like, wait, I thought you were vegetarian, and she's like, yeah, but this human flesh, it was organically sourced, so apparently that's the get out.
Yeah. Like I've been. So this main character, Deja, her name is, like, she's being confronted very early on, like you said, with these weird text messages. These are red flags that any normal person would say, there's something wrong here, and I need to turn around and get the hell out of here because nothing good will come of this. But she's very much purposefully ignoring these things because she wants what they have. This drive in her to succeed is more important than not her own self-preservation, but she's able to kind of rationalize what's happening. Oh, he's a rich guy. He's got weird fetishes. Like, I could be game for this. I'll play along. Like, why not? Like, as long as I'm consenting, there's nothing wrong happening with the two of us here. Which that, as things go on, her consent is not enough to save her. Essentially, it's more than just being able to say yes at the early parts here. It's when she wants to say no, it's already, the train's on the track and she can't kind of get out.
Yeah, there is a ramping up and an escalation of the behavior. And there's also, of course, commentary into the paparazzi and wanting to take photographs at all costs, and that comes into play with a certain character in this book too. And even when things can't get any worse, we see the manipulation and the negotiation between said Army Hammer character and the paparazzi, and money talks, opportunity talks.
It's like this whole ecosystem is happening that she is like not a part of until she steps into it and realizes that she actually has always been a part of it. She's just the bottom rung of this food chain, essentially. And so it's basically her trial by fire, uh, initiated into what it means to be a celebrity. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty apt because I mean, she does go through a trial by fire. It's that same drive that wants her to get into that world. I see that it's that same drive that helps her try to escape that world. Once she realizes that she's on this train and it's going down the tracks, it's headed to destination, and only thing she can do is try to derail it.
Yeah.
And uh it was fascinating to see her mindset shift. Uh, the fight, taking it out of the book, the fight or flight, she knew that she had to get out of there, but getting there was, golly, the things people will do for fame.
And I this jump off point with these two characters. So it's kind of these two like someone who wants it and doesn't have it, and someone who has it and wants to keep it. Right. So they both want the same thing. They want to be loved. They want to be famous. They want everyone to know who they are and to care about them. There was this part of me that is kind of the in for both these characters. I could see, I'm not going to say I could see myself in this main character, but there is a part of me that goes, I've been around for a while. I've been doing this for over a decade, almost 15 years. Like I've seen some successes, and I'm like, how do I hold on to the success that I've had? How far would I go to hold on to this? And then there's another part of me that goes, I'm not even close to what I want. I'm still this hungry person who will do what I need to do and ignore the red flags before me, because if someone's promising me something, and I will take it because I want the thing that they're promising. So there was this very much like push and pull of these two sides of myself that I was trying to kind of split into two and put into these two characters to kind of give them the kind of motivations that would feel real in a lot of ways, even though the book is completely surreal and they're, the bad guy is a monster essentially. And the main girl is, she's not a monster, but she does want things too that would put her in a position like they're in eventually. So there are these like pieces of myself that I've kind of split and put into these characters to kind of like really make the story feel alive, at least for me. Your mileage may vary reading the thing.
Yeah, and I think, if you're asking yourself, how far would you go for fame or success or whatever it is you want most. I think if people are honest with themselves, they'd go a lot further than they probably want to admit publicly. You know, if HarperCollins comes to you and they say, we're going to give you a 6-figure book deal, you just need to make love to this beef brisket. It doesn't feel like it, that, just the beef brisket. Just maybe, there's no video or anything for a lot of people, I imagine, and some people may correct and be like, Wilson, you sick fuck. I feel that, you could do that. But, it's the escalation. It's like, okay, well, now maybe we are going to make the video. No, don't make the video of it. Maybe an audience of 3. That's it.
No.
But just at what point do you say, no, I'm out? And we're talking about the thing that you want the most. And, to begin with, Deja does clarify this is consensual. So nothing wrong is happening. But then, like in her mind, I'm not saying nothing wrong is happening.
No.
That's what she's saying. That's her justification, which obviously, that brings a whole discussion of consent, of exploitation, of power dynamics, which Brandon Bowers clearly has.
Yeah, I mean, you think like the spot or the line is victimizing people, right? That's where I would say I would stop. I would do anything to get ahead, but he can't victimize people, right? Just like you would allow other people to manipulate you as long as you are not their victim, right? So she's kind of rationalizing her own victimhood or rationalizing herself out of her own victimhood as she's letting herself be led down this path of destruction, essentially. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not trying to give like easy answers to like these kinds of things. These are like big things to think about. But the book is very much like the push and pull of these ideas of victims and victimhood and where we allow ourselves to be taken advantage of because we think it will benefit us in the end, and where we are ready to take advantage of others because for the same reason it would benefit us in the end. How would we compromise ourselves in order to get the things we want? I'm making it sound like it's this bummer book. There's so many jokes in the book too. It's very funny.
It is. I was about to say it's one of the funniest books I've read in quite a while, and I don't want to spoil anything, but there's what I thought was the funniest parts were the parts dealing with bodily fluids and how in the throes of bodily fluids how people react, and not only the person who's in the throes, but also the people who are having to being subjected to it. And I just found that very, very funny. It's a very, let's just say without being too spoiler, it's a very sploogey book. And I did not expect that, though I loved it. You've taken a story that underneath all the laughter and the scares and the gross outs and all that, you have a very, very serious story there dealing with very serious things. And you allow us to look at that in a very entertaining manner. And that, I like that. When you can talk, hey, underneath all this, the subtext is this is serious shit, but I'm gonna make you crack up and gross out at the same time. Yeah, that's you got that balance just right.
Let me just add, that's the other thing that I would compare it to is the Greasy Strangler.
Yes,
there's like so much kind of look. Let's just be more explicit than Bob was. There's a lot of cum in this book. There is more cum than in any other Danger Slater book that I have read.
There's more cum in any other book I've ever read.
Yeah. And so you've got that kind of body humor and that cartoonish over the topness to it, but like Bob says, there's a seriousness underneath it. So for that, it did remind me of the Greasy Strangler, because you can take it as it is, or you can go a little bit deeper and see what it's really about and what it's thematically about.
I so appreciate both of you saying all that so much, because that is kind of exactly what I'm going for, and it's nice to hear people get it, because there is like a surface reading of a book. People do it all the time, and there's just a certain, like, you just read it and you enjoy the story, and that's fine. And then there's like the layer where you can read it and maybe dig into like the themes and stuff and see what's kind of the story underneath the story, um, which I am trying to express. That's the real story I'm trying to express. Of course, I want to write about the fucking goofy cum shots and the meat and all that other weird stuff, and the body's mutations and everything else that happens in the book. Like, that is the fun stuff. But like underneath, like there's a very like definite direction and story that I'm trying to tell. I'm trying to express something. Uh, and which is again why it sounds like I was being so serious before, when the book is very funny, because it is a serious thing that I'm trying to express. I just love the window dressing of over the top violence and silly jokes and all the other things that make books entertaining to me. You know, like, and maybe that's it too. Like, the one thing that I think that is most important beyond the message of your book, beyond anything, it's like, entertain your audience. Like, give them a show, give them something interesting to do, like to be a part of. And I am always cognizant of that fact, going, what is the next most interesting thing that could happen? And then I go, how do I make that actually tie back to the themes of the book? So it's like that. And that's kind of, and so it's always a constant escalation of just like getting weirder and weirder. As she gets deeper into this house, it just gets weirder.
Yeah, and that kind of begs the question: when you conceived of the book, was it the theme come first? Was the story? Was it an organic? Oh wow, like eureka moment! Like, hey, this all fits. You know, sometimes when you're writing, you come up with an idea that the theme is inherently there. It's rare,
Yeah.
and and you shouldn't go, "Hey, I'm going to write about this," and then you try to reverse engineer your story around a theme. You're going to get preachy and all that kind of stuff. So, how did that happen?
Oh man, I wish I had like a nice concise answer to that question. But it's just like these things just kind of come together sometimes. Like, I did hear that Army Hammer story, and I was like, what is the type of person that would go along with this guy's weird cannibal fetish stuff? Like, what, like, why are they like, okay, so maybe they also have a cannibal fetish, I guess. So two cannibal fetish people happen to meet each other. That sounds like a beautiful love story. Could happen all the time, sure. But more than likely, it's someone who's attracted to this guy's fame and attracted to the things that they think they could get out of knowing him. So they're just kind of going along with it instead of being necessarily an active and happy participant. So I was like, what would be the kind of person that would want something from a person like that? And what could they want that they would go along with it to the fucking most extreme version of what that is? And once I kind of had that idea of like that kind of character, everything else really kind of just happened. Like, it very much happened. The whole back half of the book plays out like a slasher, except that there's 5 slashers in the house essentially, and one final girl, and she's got to get through all of them.
Well, yeah, I was going to mention that this seems to be experimenting with the final girl trope, but in terms of putting it together, and you're talking about the different pieces, did you plan it out before you had like a kind of single word written of the story, or was it more that you wrote a bit, planned a bit, wrote, or what did the method look like in terms of that first draft?
Oh, sure. And this is true of all of my books, actually. But I will plan out everything before I start writing anything. Before I even start working on a first draft, I will spend a few weeks um, using physical note cards, writing down every idea I have for the book, including characters, scenes, bits of dialogue, literally anything I could think of. Just until I'm done, I'll have a stack of like hundreds of cards, and then I will spend a day or two spreading them all out on the floor and organizing them into a coherent story where it's getting rid of ones that don't make sense, obviously, and kind of um, building something that looks and follows an actual logical point A to point B, so that when I sit down to write that first draft, I can get the first draft done in like a few weeks, like 2 or 3 weeks. I'll get a first draft out. And we're talking novella. So like 30,000, 40,000 words in that first 2 or 3 weeks, because I planned every bit of the actual plot. So I don't need to spend a lot of time going, well, what happens next? I'm just following the cards and making sure that all my dots actually connected, and the second draft is where the story really gets filled in, like where I'm actually kind of filling out the scenes and stuff. But that first draft, I'll just like go as fast as I'll spend 2 or 3 weeks planning it, then write the draft itself as fast as possible, and then spend a few months working on that second draft, which is the actual like filling everything in, filling out all the character stuff, making the dialogue actual dialogue, making the scenes feel alive, and explaining what things look like and stuff like that.
So, in terms of the comedy and the humor in your books, I'm wondering, is that something that also happens in the first draft stage? Does it happen organically? Is it something that is planned into the draft?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just kind of organically happening. I don't sit there and have like a pocket full of jokes that I'm like, how do I jam these into the story? It's usually, um, there's two types of things, like two types of humor that would happen in something. There's the situational stuff, which might be kind of plotted out beforehand. And then there's kind of the character dialogue stuff, which kind of arises as you're writing. So a lot of just the back and forth dialogue jokes um, are just happening pretty much in, not necessarily even not in the planning stage, not in the first draft stage, but in the second draft, when I really start getting into the scene. I'm just like, well, what would this character say? What is it? If this character was like this personality, what would they say? I mean, that's, I guess, how anyone would write anything, but I have my characters usually be funny to a degree. And there's also the humor of just having like the juxtaposition of the unexpected. So like not necessarily like implicitly like this is funny, but like it's funny because I wasn't expecting this left turn to happen. Um yeah, these things just kind of pop up.
Yeah, and another
Like, did that
aspect.
answer your question? I
It
don't
did. It did. Yeah, yeah. You don't have a book of jokes. It
know.
happens. It's organic. you know.
No.
And I mean, another aspect of Starlet is, I mean, you've got between some of the regular chapters these movie reviews of Brandon Bauer's movies, and of course, it can always be difficult when you want to give backstory on a character, but you obviously don't want an info dump. So I thought this was a great way that fit this particular story to get around that problem and to give us some insight into, the frustrations and how Brandon might have become the man that he is.
Yeah, I even, so yeah, I think there's like 10 chapters or something in the book. So each chapter starts it basically covers 20 years in his career with just a review of one of his movies, a movie I made up. Obviously, they're not real movies, but these are, but they're like archetypes of movies. So what I did there was I thought of like how a trajectory of a career of kind of a stalled leading man would go. So it's kind of starts out with like getting attention in like the indie art house sphere, and then they're kind of like, oh, you're handsome, let's start putting them in these blockbusters and see what we could do, what kind of, if you could head up a franchise or something. Sometimes that works, and then sometimes it doesn't, and in Brandon's case it doesn't work, so he kind of tries to go into this like more like um in like art house fare. He's like, well, let me be a prestige actor and win the awards, and be like one of those kind of actors instead, which fails even worse than his kind of blockbuster run. And then by the end, he's doing like direct to streaming movies where he's only in them because he gets to have his name big on the poster still.
Yeah, and I wonder, I mean, it's like it was so authentic throughout. Have you had any experience with Hollywood or with people within those circles?
No, not necessarily. I watch a lot of movies. I'm to a degree, but not in that kind of way, like where you're like really in the machine. I'm just kind of like, you know, being an author, you're kind of on the outside of that, but like adjacent to it in a lot of ways too. Your storytelling, and that's what movies are. We all want fucking movie deals for our books. Like that's where the real money's happening. Um, so it's a lot of just kind of what I've absorbed over the years, just kind of from the outside looking in, and um, just being a fan of movies and kind of movie culture itself. I would say if I had a hobby, it would be watching and discussing movies. So it is like something I'm just interested in. So I do read a lot of reviews and like kind of critical analyses and YouTube essays on movies and stuff. So it's kind of like right where I'm at.
Yeah, and in terms of your books, if you could choose for one to be made into a movie, which book would you go for?
I mean, Starlet is built basically to be a movie itself. Like it is structured like a movie. Especially the beginning, like it's pretty familiar territory up into like the turn where it starts getting weird. So like it is very much like, oh, like a girl goes somewhere and things go bad. Like that is what fucking movies are. Um, there's a lot of stuff that I've written that is like, and I think we were talking about this. I don't know if this is on mic or before we started recording, where it's like, how would they even film this thing that I've written if they were to make it a movie? Like it's not really built for that necessarily translation. But Starlight itself has the structure very much on purpose because it's a book about movies to feel like how a movie would feel.
Yeah, and is there anything that you're doing to look about shopping the rights around? Do you have any kind of connections, a film agent or like people?
Yeah. I will. I mean, it's very difficult to get anybody to pay attention to anything, but I do have a film agent. Her name is Carmen, who is doing her thing out there, trying to do her thing. Um, she also is a producer herself, but kind of
Mm.
working on her own thing. So I'm in the mix, like as far as getting anything like this made, it's like it's great to have someone who has connections like her, but also she's not she's going to pitch it to the right people. So unless she's like talking to someone who wants to make a freaky, weird horror movie, like it's not going to come up in the conversation. And that's just kind of how the agents who do that work. Like they're not gonna, unless the book itself is blowing up and then people start knocking on her door asking for me. But otherwise, it's like I have a pocket full of stories. Who's the right story for this person? Like, what's the right pitch for this producer or this studio or whatever?
I have like a really, really sick mind, and I would think that if Army Hammer wanted to do a comeback movie, Starlet's the
Yeah.
fucking script, you know, because it would be crazy if he could just if he leaned into it, said, "Yeah, I'll fucking do it," you know.
That would be
It's
that would be
just-
that would be a lot. That would be I don't know how I would be scared, to be honest.
I know, but I mean, if he's just like, yeah, I get it. I totally get it. I get where you're coming from. I get everything about it, and I'll do it justice. That would be like, wow,
Yeah.
that's so fucking crazy.
Then I'm at that moment where we were talking about before, where I'm like, okay, well, would my working with him make me, because I want this done, I want a movie made,
Right.
would that make me now one of the victimizers? Am I now in league with the fucking bad guys because I want the thing that they can give me? And that is like that fucking Faustian bargain that is offered to like anyone who's trying to get ahead or do anything to get ahead, is this like trade-off of like, you're gonna have to fucking possibly swallow some shit if you want to get the thing that you get or want to get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Army Hammer is just a little bit too on the nose there. It's like, as Bob said, he's like, yeah, I get it. It's like, no, you get it too much. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I I fear for the safety of whoever would be cast as Deja. It's like, in that situation. So I could imagine maybe someone like Andrew Scott playing Brandon, who was in the TV show Ripley. He is also in Fleabag and
Mm-hmm.
Sherlock.
Yeah.
He's an Irish actor. He's got that kind of classic look, but I don't know. Probably it was because of how good he was in Ripley that now I don't trust him. I think there's something under the surface. So,
I,
yeah.
if I was to cast Brandon, I would want Josh Hartnett to play it.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Like he's very, very handsome. I was like trying to think of like, not that I sit out here trying to cast my books, but I was thinking about it with this one. Like I said, I do have an agent who's trying to pitch it to people. Like, I'm like, who would I want to play there? And I'm like trying to think of actors that have a kind of that trajectory where like Josh Hartnett was like really hot when I was a teenager or late teenager in my early 20s, whatever, like 20 years ago. And he kind of went away for a while, and he's kind of having his little comeback right now with that M. Night Shyamalan movie he was just in. But he's still great. He's still very handsome, but like, I don't know. It's just like, I want that kind of like, I would love to have an actor who like embodies what the character actually is. Yeah, like you're saying, Armie Hammer would be a little too on the nose, but just like someone trying to have a comeback, someone that we love that needs a comeback would be like great to cast in a movie like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I find it amazing too that it's like you have this actor who has like this really, really dark side, and he's managed to keep it hidden even within his movies. I mean, we have a guy who is the living embodiment of Lonely Island's "I jizzed in my pants," and I mean, but he manages to keep that a fucking secret. It's like this guy comes when the wind blows,
Yeah.
which it's led to some extreme, like laugh out loud scenes in the book. And I'm just like, how did this guy keep it fucking secret, man? It's like, well, how did you do that? But I don't know, it makes me think of how many people in Hollywood actually have those kind of kinks and things like that. And it's probably more than we can imagine.
I mean, and the thing is too, like these secrets in Hollywood are like open secrets that everybody already knows.
Mm-hmm.
Like these people have Like, and it's not everybody, obviously, but the fucking bad guys, like, are doing it with impunity because they have all this power, and everyone is just kind of like looking the other way or pretending like they don't know or whatever, until it gets to the critical mass where, like, okay, now something needs to happen. Now we need to arrest them, or now they need to face
Mhm.
consequences, or someone finally, you know, victim number 120 is finally the one that breaks the fucking camel's back for some reason. But like, that
Right.
is like, it is happening, and it's probably going to continue to happen forever, and not just in Hollywood, but everywhere, because this is just
Mhm.
like the dark part of, the world itself, and
Right.
power. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and it's like what the same thing happened with Ron Jeremy, and he's in the adult business, so it's kind of like, dude, what you really had it all, and you ruined it, and of course now he's like totally mentally incompetent, has dementia, conveniently weird, but I don't know, it's just there's a dark side, and you really you expose it, uh and it's good that you did in such an entertaining way. It's like, if you're listening to this and you're on the fence of reading this book, you should really read it, because there's some on the surface stuff and there's some undersurface stuff that cuts. That's really important.
yeah. I wish I was like as good at explaining myself as I am at, like, when I have time to sit down and write these kinds of things, because I feel like I kind of like lose my own beat, like my own, I lose the fucking beat when I'm talking. Like, I don't know where I'm going. I'm like, oh man, so half the time I'm like, I know I have a point to make, but I don't know where I'm landing now. Like, when I sit down to write, it's like actually slowing my brain down in a way that I could have these kinds of thoughts and these kinds of debates in a way that I can actually make sense and make it a real point of what I'm trying to do, instead of just kind of rambling or firing off tweets where, you know, uh, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm getting at. It's exactly what I'm talking about.
This is exactly why we're writers, because we get that opportunity to have these multiple drafts and to really consider, what it is that we want to say. So I think, a lot of people are in a similar situation. But I mean, as you mentioned, social media, I mean, what is your relationship like with that at the moment? And I mean, how do you even decide what it is that you're going to put out as content on social media?
Yeah, I wish I wish I had better opinions about stuff, because I can't, not that I wish I had better opinions, but I wish I knew how to express my opinions in a better way, because I feel like a lot, especially Twitter, but a lot of it is kind of built around kind of putting an opinion out there and then having people kind of like corroborate your opinion, or push up against it or whatever, or retweet you or reblog you or whatever, saying, hey, yeah, I think this too, this guy's speaking for me, like, uh and that's just not how it works, because every time I have a thought about something, I also think about the other side of it, and it's not like I'm like, oh, well, this obviously wrong thing is not something I should be against. But I'm like, why would I need to say that? Why would I need to say the thing that everyone else is saying? Like, so I treat it very much like a place for me to make jokes and kind of make silly content, because that's what I can bring to the table that is uniquely me, that I know I can handle. So I could not really get too deep into it, um, into like actually engaging with social media. I just can post my little joke and then let that sit there and be like, I still exist, guys. Look, there's a funny picture of me.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to be, particularly with the type of books that you're writing. It's complementary to what you're doing. And I mean, we don't have to talk about social media for too long. It's probably best that we don't. But the big negative, I think, is that there's always an encouragement to have a strong opinion on a polarizing issue, but often an issue where if you look at it properly, there's a lot of nuance and there's some truth on either side. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't engage in these things a lot because also I'm liable and it's okay for me to change my mind. So I don't want to put this definitive statement when, in a few weeks' time, if presented with evidence to the contrary, well, I might have a different
Yeah.
opinion. And the world isn't really painted in black and white, it's all these different shades and these different colors.
And we're in like kind of a transitional stage of social media anyway. Like I know, like me in particular found a lot of success through Twitter 8 years ago, which you're in the same boat. I'm assuming with the podcast and in your own writing, using Twitter, it's kind of your main place. Um, it is a rapidly sinking ship at this point, where you do not get kind of a fraction of the engagement or eyes on anything that you used to, even if it is one of those hot button or controversial issues that get a lot of retweets. It's still not working the way it used to. So I don't know what the next thing is. Like people be like, "Oh, do a TikTok." I sound like I'm 100 years old. Do a TikTok. People be like, go on TikTok, but it's like the same fucking thing. It's just the new thing, and it's like, what? That's not really the answer. And I don't want to sit around and make stupid like videos of myself dancing. Like it's just not my vibe. So like, I don't know what is really next. I think it might be kind of more like these kind of discords and places that are more community focused, where it's very specific people that you're talking to instead of trying to talk to the whole world like you would on a Twitter. You're going to be talking to a couple hundred people in this Discord and then maybe a couple hundred people in this other one, and that's kind of the way to kind of get your kind of brand out there, is more personal and direct than necessarily uh like a big billboard on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, it would make sense because a lot of things are cyclical and kind of the earlier days of the internet were forums and
Yeah.
message boards. And that's kind of what, Discord and other platforms are essentially like. That's what they're doing. But yeah, in terms of a kind of Twitter replacement, if there is one, it hasn't arrived yet. You've got Blue Sky that's essentially a copycat and that's getting some traction, but I don't see it ever taking over and becoming bigger than Twitter.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it will be innovative, but TikTok is not the platform for writers. It's kind of the worst platform for writers in the sense that, exactly what you were articulating before, that like video and kind of in person conversations, that's not where you have clarity of thought. So I think it would be at least a text based medium, but maybe
Yeah.
we're done with it. Maybe people are fed up of, you know, these text based Twitter clones and Facebook clones.
And like, I mean, not to speculate or get off topic here, but like, we're in the middle of a big paradigm shift in what the internet even is going to be anyway. Because in 5 years, with all this AI take, like, it's just going to be a completely different place. You're going to be all the content's going to be written by robots. Robots are going to be reading it. Like, we're just going to be sitting there on the sidelines watching them do their fucking thing. Like, it's just kind of like not going to be what it was. And I don't know where finding new readership is going to come from, because the things that used to work for me are really kind of on their way out.
I don't know if either of you have noticed, but if you ask a question or search for something that could lend itself to a question on Google, then these days at the top is an AI generated answer, kind of trying to distill and to summarize from different websites what the answer to that question may be. So even these big platforms are shifting in the way in which they operate because of, the emergence and the popularity of AI. And I,
Yeah.
I think like basically anything pertaining to technology, AI could be good or could be bad depending upon how it is used. It is not it is not good for, creativity and for the arts and for writing. Let's get that out the way before they're like, "Whoa, this is horror is making a pro AI statement." No, I'm not. But, I could see for a very quick summation and an overview from Google, it could be useful to a point. It gives you a quick starting point. Probably not so good that it outweighs all of the disadvantages, but that there are some aspects that might be positive from it. But as it is managed and controlled by humans, there's your flaw. They normally seem to fuck up everything anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and
Yeah,
then
they've been. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, I was gonna say, but then the AI is going to fuck everything up too, because like it is just going to be taking bad information and then feeding it back into itself. like
Yeah, yeah.
like if Google is getting its information from articles to kind of give you an overview, and then they start having AI write articles instead of people, then it's just self-referencing itself. So there's really no veracity or no way to verify this kind of information. You, I mean, I guess that's true of any information you read on the internet at any time, but at least like at some point you would assume the person who wrote the article was some sort of journalist or someone who spent some time actually studying or learning about the thing that they're writing about or researching it or something. Like you could at least have the knowledge that somebody cared enough to do the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even in my corporate setting, we have AI. We have our own search engine because we have, promotional things and things like that. So we have our own search engine that we use, and they've incorporated AI into it. And literally every time I search something, if I'm trying to find a promotion, like I have customers who come in who, talk to someone on the phone, say, "Hey, yeah, they said to look up this promotion." I'm like, "Oh, good, you have the code." And so I'll punch it into the search engine. The first thing that comes up is an AI aggregate explanation of the promotion. Doesn't tell you how to do it, just tells you what you get. And it's kind of like at my level, a 12-year employee, it's kind of like, okay, that's the no shit part. I have to go to the next link, which actually takes me to the promotion, which is the info that I need. Like, how do I actually do this? Oh, and so to me, that's my own company has invested in this, and it's a complete and total waste of time. And if you read in our private forums that we have, there are thousands of comments going, well, why did y'all do this?
Yeah.
Even new employees are like, this is dumb. We want the actual content. We don't want the aggregate of it. Thanks for the definition. It's like, oh wow, crazy.
Someone's gonna have to build a new internet. That's what's gonna happen. This internet
Yeah,
is gonna get ruined, and we're gonna need a second one that is like not full of that. Like that is just like how it used to be.
yeah.
I sound like an old person, just like it was better, but like it was. It's not even that it was better. It worked. It used to work, and now
Yeah,
it's like breaking. It's all
yeah.
breaking down.
It's the internaut. We need to have so turn what's now into the internaut, and then we'll have internet too. Yeah.
I like that.
Now, shifting away from the internet to Kit Kats, I
Oh,
believe that you have a new obsession, a new passion, and that is Kit Kats, and that can be verified for people watching the video because there seems to be almost a
There's a
Kit Kat
there's a poster.
poster
Yep.
or some sort of promotion in your house. So
Yeah.
talk us through this. Last time we spoke, it was the Guinness Book of Records that was the interest, and now you have evolved to Kit Kats.
I've realized something about myself over the past couple of years that it's I get I kind of just start doing things without really putting a lot of forethought into it, and then I just keep rolling with it, right? Like a few years ago, I read a long book that was it was eight. I read Ant Kind by Charlie Kaufman. It's like an 800-page book, the longest book I'd ever read at the point. And I said, "Wow, I can't believe I read this long book. Hey, what if I only read long books for a whole year and see what happens?" Didn't think about it. I just started doing it. Then I spent the next year reading only books that were over 600 pages. So that was my thing. I read like I only read like 15 books, I think, or 16 books that year because they were all so long. Um, but I spent a whole year reading long books, and I was like, "Cool, I'm done. I did it, great." And then I realized that I do this all the time. That I like start committing to bits that I didn't realize I was even setting a bit up for myself, and that's sort of what this Kit Kat thing is. Not that it is a bit because they're delicious candy bars. I've had so many at this point, but my partner, my girlfriend, had a subscription box to this snack company that would send international snacks to your house every month. And one month, I believe it was Japan, sent their box and it had a few random Kit Kat flavors in it. Like, not chocolate, but like strawberry or something, right? And I was just like, "What the hell's this?" I ate it. Oh, it's delicious. And I was like, "I didn't know they had that in Japan. Like, that's so weird. Let me check this out." I looked it up. Apparently, they have like over 200 flavors in Japan. So I was like, "Fuck it, I want to eat them all." So I started trying to eat them all. Just trying to get my hands on them, which is not an easy thing to do because a lot of them are from other countries. Um, but yeah, I did this. I'm still doing it. I don't post about it like I used to, but I'm still eating them, and I'm up to about 70 or something like that. Different flavors I've tried.
Yeah, before I came to Japan, I just knew of Kit Kat, and I think maybe they made Kit Kat Chunky that was just this is a Kit Kat but bigger, and maybe they made Kit Kat Dark that was
Yeah,
marginally darker chocolate and a Kit Kat. But then coming to Japan, there's so many flavors, to the point where I went back to the UK last year as a novelty, like for my family, I bought them loads of different Kit Kats because, yeah, you have strawberry, as you mentioned, you have matcha, there's stuff like orange Kit Kat, but there's even more kind of obscure flavors. There might even at one point have been something like Earl Grey Kit Kat. Like
yep,
who who decides that is a good idea? But I think in Japan as well, there's a real thing about limited edition chocolate and people just lapping it up and buying it, and also seasonal chocolate. So there might be a flavor that is going to be popular in autumn of that Kit Kat, but yeah, once autumn is over, that's it until next autumn, and it creates this urgency and this
yeah,
demand, which then helps with the sales. But I think the takeaway for me is I've got to start photographing the Kit Kats and send them to you and be like, are there any missing from your collection? Buy that one and then like build up a collection and send you some of these
that
Kit
is
Kats because
that is
there's so
I
many.
was that's how I was getting so there was a couple different places I was getting them. I was um first of all, they started doing some limited edition ones in the States themselves. So we've had like breakfast cereal. It's like Fruit Loops flavored and churro and stuff like that. So But I have a place called Uwajimaya down the street that is a international, specifically Asian food market, and they usually have um, some there. So they will get like kind of a rotating stock of some there. And then there was an online place called Sugio Mart or something like that I would order them from Japan itself, that they would ship them over. We were spending a lot of money to get chocolate bars shipped internationally. I'm like, wow, it's like $30 in international customs shipping for like $20 worth of candy bars. But um, I also started getting people to mail them to me too, like who had access to them. So I've had some really interesting flavors, like uh, tons of different sake flavored ones. Um, uh, a wasabi one, which was a lot better than I thought it would be. The wasabi is actually kind of a um, subtle kind of like hidden note. Like it was very much a white chocolate, but then this like little spice would creep up in the back. That you know the wasabi spice kind of like sits in the back of your nose a little bit, like so you'd like kind of feel it in the back of your throat. That like that burn. Yeah, it's crazy. Like I said, I've had about 70 at this point, and they're almost all good.
Yeah. I'm really curious because I know how candy is. My mom used to work for Hershey, and I know that. Have you ever tried like the regular Kit Kat, but international? In other words, like the regular flavor that we have here in the States. Is it? Do you feel it's better, or do you feel that it's like an inferior quality? The reason I bring that up is like prime example Cadbury egg when I think Nestle bought them. The original Cadbury only had 4 ingredients. Now it has 18, because of in the U.S. they want to have a longer shelf life, so they put additives and preservatives in there, and so that way you have a candy that can come out during spring and last throughout all the way from the time it hits the stores past Easter, and so without spoiling. And so is there a difference?
I mean, yes. The thing is though, a lot of the um, Kit Kats that are other flavors are using white chocolate as the base instead of the regular milk chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
So because I think it kind of the white chocolate kind of like lends itself to better flavor, like
Right.
profile with some random fruit or something. But
Mm-hmm.
so it's hard to say there. No, I don't know. I haven't really noticed a huge difference, to be perfectly honest. Like in
Yeah.
between the chocolate varieties. The thing is, they all taste different to me. So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know. It's just curious because I know people that have had like the old style Cadburys, and they're like the olds are way better than the news. But we're talking about one company, one candy.
well,
So
it's like Mexican Coke too. And I mean, I don't know if you know anything about think about that, Michael, but in America, the Mexican Coke is like it comes in a glass bottle and it's like got real sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup. So you know, it's like you go to your Mexican restaurant, you're like, hell yeah, I actually want this Coke.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I
yeah, they
have
started
heard
making
of
Dr
that.
Pepper
It
like that.
it took my brain a while to realize that you were talking about Mexican Coca-Cola.
Oh.
I don't know. We had quite the leap here, but no, I knew about that primarily because the old one of the former prime ministers of the UK, Rishi Sunak, he had a Coca-Cola obsession, and he started talking about the virtues and benefits of Mexican Coca-Cola. So
Yeah.
that is the only reason that I knew about that. Yeah.
It was the same thing Bob was saying. It's very much like less ingredients. It's just like sugar water, so it's a much
Yeah,
purer, like flavored version of what it's supposed to be instead of the kind that they have in the vending machine that's full of whatever else they put into it. So it can sit in a vending machine for 2 years and still be good.
Yeah, they did the same thing with Dr. Pepper. You can get it with real cane sugar. You can get the old style Dr. Pepper, and of course, which I don't drink because I'm a diabetic. I can have sugar, so I have to have Dr. Pepper's like zero or diet. Uh, but they do have the ones with the cane sugar, and from what people have told me, that's like that's the good stuff, So it's like, yeah, but even Dr. Pepper, I've been drinking it, that since I was a little kid, and the flavors changed. If you want the old school Dr. Pepper, you got to get a Mr. Pibb. So, yeah.
And Michael, can I ask you this question too? Because because you live, do you live in Japan still?
Yeah, I
Okay.
do.
I've heard that the Kit Kats are popular in Japan because it sounds like a kind of thing that people say when they say goodbye to each other. Is that true? I don't know. I wish I remembered exactly what it was, but it was like it sounds like I wish you well or something, or like something like that in the Japanese language. People like to give them as little gifts, like when people leave.
God, it sounds familiar, and I wonder if it's like something to do with like shorthand of Kyotskete, which is like to kind of, take care of yourself. I I have heard something similar, but I'm trying to remember what exactly is the origin of this. But I think you are onto
Yeah.
something. My goodness, and it's not even Kit Kat is not the first chocolate bar or sweet that has had a connection because of this. There was like another thing. It's like, oh, it sounds like this Japanese phrase, but this is the point where if I was writing it for a book or if it was an interview question on paper, that I'd
Yeah.
have the perfect answer. But
I know.
I
I
think,
thought maybe you knew, like offhand. I don't know.
yeah. Well, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look into that while I ask you another question, and then I'm gonna come back with my research. And
Well,
in
there is
fact,
a reason for them to. I mean, most of the flavors are coming out of Japan specifically. Different countries
yeah,
have different
yeah,
ones, but Japan is the one that really is going like whole like all the way with all these different flavors.
yes, it is, yeah. And okay, so you are completely right. So the Japanese kitokato is similar to kitokatsu, which means good luck. So there you go. We have confirmed it.
Nice.
And in terms of kind of continuing the Kit Kat thread and your passion for Kit Kats, if you're interested, what I'll start doing is I will actually start taking a photograph every time I see some Kit Kats and some different flavors, and then I'll post it in the Discord channel because I think other people will be interested too, and I'll
Yeah.
tag you and be like, are there any of these flavors that you haven't tried? And then I'll make a note of each one. And then when there's enough to minimize shipping and customs costs, like I can make a kind of care package of Kit Kats.
That
And
would be
yeah,
amazing. We would have a little
yeah,
feast here.
yeah,
I brought him to StokerCon when I went a few years ago too. I had a little tasting. I have all these extras because they come in. Usually they don't. You can't
yeah.
buy like a single. You got to get a whole bag. So I'll have all these extras. I was just like I had them all out, and I was sitting there talking about them and all the different flavor notes and stuff. Like this is when I was really like in. I mean, I was still into it, but I was like deep into it at first. I was like trying to get them all like really, really quickly. So I had this kind of like working knowledge of all these flavors.
I could see some kind of documentary, some British guy going, and we're going to talk to Danger Slater today, who is an expert in the connoisseur of Kit Kat. And then it's like they go into this, my obsession started.
I have like my turtleneck on, like, cause like every expert's got to wear a turtleneck.
Well,
Yeah.
what is it that you're writing at the moment? What is the book that is currently in progress?
Oh, well, yeah. I'm writing this book about this. I don't even know how to explain this. It's about this insufferable neoliberal couple that wake up one day with this with umbilical cords stretching from their bellies to their garbage disposal, and they're trapped in their house by these umbilical cords, and they're starving to death, and they soon realize that they can only survive by feeding human blood and body parts to their garbage disposal. So they need to figure out who among their friends and acquaintances are worthy of living and who's worthy of becoming food so that they can sustain themselves. It's very, it's I don't even know if that made any sense. It's very much a social satire, kind of in the vein of like um, like an American Psycho, but obviously surreal and with body horror stuff instead.
So they have an umbilical cord, and it
Yeah,
is attached to the
garbage
waste
disposal.
disposal,
Yeah.
unit, and but then they have to decide which of their friends will survive or which will be sacrificed. But then does that mean, so can they detach the umbilical cord so they can go about their day and they
No,
can
no. Well, they're inviting people over to their house. They
okay,
have they
okay.
have okay. So the husband is a invented a an app called Backyards, which is sort of like next door, except it also hooks up to your Ring doorbell so that everyone can see through everyone else's doorbell. So it's like next door, but everyone's also spying on everybody else. So it's like, but the idea is like, oh, but it's like so that we have a nice safe neighborhood, but it's also like everyone's up in each other's business, and they're all secretly judgmental of each other, and these are the types of people that I'm very much making fun of. Not making fun of, but examining, let's say, the types of people that I work for. I do, like I said, I do dog walking, and a lot of very well-meaning but well-off people are the types of people that are hiring someone to come walk their dogs. And I don't think they realize that their fact that they have money skews, even though they are professing the right things, they are, very socially progressive minded, at least in what they're saying. The fact that they have money actually warps their actual worldview in a way that I don't think a lot of them realize. So I'm kind of trying to examine that dichotomy where people say this one thing, but when it comes time to actually walk the walk, they can rationalize themselves out of this. So this is why they're kind of like, oh, we profess we like these types of things, but then if I have to kill these people, this one did this thing, so they deserve to die. Like I have to make these hard decisions based off of what I think is right. I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this, but
I I don't know, because you've really sold me on it.
I know,
I
dude. I've got
really
my
want
credit
to
card
read this.
ready.
Yeah.
I want to read this.
yeah, it is it's it's transgressive in a way that I normally don't do. I'm not necessarily trying to be provocative when I write in a way that is like, let me try and push people their boundaries of what makes them feel comfortable. But this is a book that I am kind of doing that. I've been reading a lot of like Chuck Palahniuk and like Alyssa Nutting and Otesha Moshfegh, I think her name is. These are people that are like doing these kind of social satires with a horror bent to them. And I've just kind of been like, what would a Danger Slater version of that be? Like, what would my version of doing a social satire be? And of course, it involves body horror because all of my books kind of go in that direction because I can't help myself. So, um, yeah, Yeah, I'm hoping I hit the right tone, because if I don't, nobody's going to want to publish it. Like, it's a really fine line of like I'm making fun of quote unquote liberal people, because a lot of these people are not actually what they claim to be. And it is infuriating to me, someone who actually wants or sees what the kind of hypocritical nature of all this. It's kind of infuriating to be like, I love what you say, but I don't like you or the way you're saying it. Or like what, I don't know. Like, it's, we'll see. We'll see what it looks like when I'm done. I think it's turning out really good, but at the same time, I'm pretty nervous about it.
And
It's
so
good to
it's
be nervous about it,
Yeah.
though, because that
yeah.
means that you're doing like what I was talking about earlier. You're doing something that is maybe provocative is the right word, you know?
Every time I sit down, I say to myself, what would be a great, awesome commercial idea that would get me tens, hundreds of thousands of readers? And then I come up with something and then write the exact opposite of that, because I'm an asshole who can't help myself. I just can't get excited about that idea enough to write it. I have to do the thing that speaks to me, which is usually the weirdest or most like difficult thing.
Michael David Wilson goes through that every draft.
Yeah. Yeah, the amount of times I've been like, right, this time I'll write something commercial. And then like I'll just add an element like a calisthenic sex cult, and it's like, well, now you've spoilt it, haven't you? This is not gonna be the mainstream thing that you wanted it to. But yeah, if I just try to write something mainstream, then it's so boring and so inauthentic and just so obvious the reasons that I'm doing it. And so you're far more likely to be successful doing that weird idea that you 100% believe in. Because also, I mean, the ideas that become really popular, as we said earlier, they're never a copycat. It's something that is
Yeah.
original and something that is unique. So you just have to continue doing these weird ideas. And if you do enough, then maybe you'll land upon one which will make you considerable money. And maybe you won't, but at least you had fun doing it
Yeah.
and, you didn't sell out.
Hmm. Yeah, I wrote a novella during the summer that started off because I'm extremely fearful of home invasion. That's because just you can sit there and just read a couple of those real life accounts and you realize that this can happen to anyone at any time. And so, and that shit scares me. I mean, like, that's a fear that I have, and I wanted to explore that. And of course, it turned out to be something that is, quite funny, but also probably some of the most violent shit I've ever written in my entire life. Because the idea is like, how do I make this different? How do I make it stand out? How do I make it weird? And I said, fuck it, I'm going all in. So I took something that could have been very, very commercial, you know, and now I don't know anybody who would publish it. I mean, because it's fucking violent, man.
Yeah.
There's parts in there that I couldn't finish. I mean, I had to write over several nights because I was just like, God damn. But I'm like, okay, I'm pushing it. It's the only way I'm gonna get anybody to like my characters. Believe it or not, it's the antagonists are the protagonists. So
It's just,
crazy.
it's just like there's like, and I don't know about you guys, but like I try to think of the stuff that really resonates with me, the kind of movies that I love or the books that I love that kind of echo into my soul, and it's never the popular stuff. It never is. Like, oh, maybe not true, but there's occasionally like a popular thing that it hits me. But like a lot of times it's like I'm going out of my way to watch movies that I feel like I'm trying to discover something, instead of like just saying like, oh yeah, Transformers 11's out. Like, let me turn my brain off and watch Transformers 11. Like, there's a time and place for that. Like, not everything needs to be a fucking challenge to your brain. But at the same time, it's not like I'm not out there saying this is my favorite movie or the best thing that's ever happened, right? There's the real shit is not popular by design. And that's something I've always consumed. And I don't know why I would be making anything different, right? Like, when it comes down to it, aside from the fact that there's a part of me that goes, make something that people want to read because you want to get paid and not walk rich people's dogs anymore. Like, you want to make art that can provide for you. That's the goal of every, I mean, maybe that's not the goal of every artist, but that is one of the goals. When you write something, you say, I want people to read it. And the way people are reading it is by buying it. Like, so it kind of goes hand in hand. So there is this part of me that's always like, how do I do that? And then it's never the thing I want to actually write. It's never the thing I want to write. And I don't even know if it would be able to. Like, even if I came up with the most commercial idea, like, I don't know if I could do it. Like, maybe I'm not that type of person. Maybe I am just a little freaky weirdo, and I should just really embrace that instead of trying to wish that I was a type of artist that everyone, that my grandma could be into. Like, maybe I shouldn't be trying to make art that grandmas could be into. Maybe I should make art that makes grandmas upset. Or as many people as upset as possible. Like, who cares? Like, whatever's speaking to me, like, I should just be following that and not thinking about that. I'm pep talking myself as we go. like, I'm kind of like examining this as we're talking. So
I think there's a lot of truth in terms of what you're saying, and I mean the thing I think is, like I said before, I think the more that you write, that's like tickets to the lottery. That's tickets to something good happening. So I'll just keep writing more of these weird books, and I'll hope that eventually maybe one will speak to enough people, or I know Army Hammer will read it and then it will go viral for all the wrong reasons, but that'll end up with curiosity and sales, or maybe one of them will be made into a movie and the movie is much more commercial than the book, and then
yeah,
that kind of works out, or you get royalties on the back of that. So it only takes one book, but a surefire guarantee to not have it happen is if you just stop writing. Some people, they think, oh, these ideas aren't commercial, so I'm just going to give up. I'm disillusioned. And it's like, well, if you give up, you've definitely lost. But if you keep writing, you're giving yourself a chance every single time. And I think what you said about not being able to write a commercial book, it's probably true in the sense that neither of us can write a commercial book authentically because we don't believe in it.
yeah.
So I don't know, maybe the people who write it and they do well and they're a success, they do believe in it. And that's not for us. Like, if you write a commercial one, there's got to be at least one joke that is derogatory towards Richard Gere. And even that could be enough that people are out. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just think keep doing what you're doing. You're one of my favorite writers. I always have a good time when I'm reading your stuff, and it's because you are you rather than you trying to be a writer that you're not. So yeah, keep on doing it.
I love that. Thank you so much. That's awesome. I'm also sitting here like calling myself Danger Slater. I'm like already self-selecting myself out of so many people's minds because they're gonna be like, "What the fuck is that?" Like, I'm. Like, I'm not going to read a book by someone who calls himself Danger. But then there's a bunch of people that are going to go, actually, I'm 100% going to read a book because this guy's called himself Danger. Like, I need to know what that is. So, I'm just going to dig in. That's my path forward. That's what I'm seeing. I'm just going to dig into the dangerness.
We've never actually asked about the Danger name origin story. We asked last time about why you were the world's most flammable writer, but I think the question for this podcast is why Danger Slater?
Oh, this was. I've barely talked about this. This is a nickname that has been around for like 20 years for me. It wasn't when I started writing, I kind of reclaimed it. It wasn't like everyone was calling me this for a long time, but when I was in high school, um, I don't know if you remember Jackass, but this was
Oh yeah,
Jackass was very popular. So we were those kinds of kids that like to fuck around, like those guys, and we weren't afraid to kind of run around and hurt ourselves. Um, the thing is, the the name itself came from I was on a date with this girl, and we went ice skating, and I didn't know how to ice skate, and I kept falling over, like in a really comical way. I was a gangly dude, and like my legs would be like whoop, 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 and kicking, and I would slip and I'd fall. And it got to the point where the ref at the ice skating rink pulled me aside and told me I was a danger to everybody else on the ice because I kept falling and getting in the way. And I told this story to my friends, and they thought it was very, very funny. So they started calling me that, ironically, because they're like, "Oh, you're like a goofball who can't even stand upright." Um, but I kind of internalized it, right? So I was like, "Yeah, I'm Danger Slater. That's like my nickname now." So then I started being like more outgoing to match the nickname itself. So then when we were started messing around, like I said, we were into Jackass and all these other things, I would be the one who was instigating or pushing myself further or doing the thing that was the stupidest thing or the thing that was going to hurt myself because I went, wait a minute, I'm Danger. That's what I'm doing. That's who I am. So let me do that thing. So there was a couple of years there where like I was embodying this like shitty amateur stuntman mindset, all because I couldn't ice skate and I was trying to impress a girl. So it's a very long way of saying when I started writing um, in 2010 or so, I wanted to pick a pen name. I mean, I could have used my real birth name, but I picked this as my pen name or reclaimed my nickname because I wanted my writing to feel like that person that I was when I was pushing myself, going, yeah, I'll be the one who'll get in the shopping cart. You push me down the hill. I don't care. Like to be the one who's like, I'm not afraid of anything, and I don't want my fiction to be afraid of anything. And when I get in front of people as an author and put myself out there, to not be afraid um, of anything that's coming my way. So I once again tried to reclaim this nickname and give it a power that I could then follow, which to varying degrees of success, I think I've done so.
So not being able to ice skate was basically the best thing that has ever happened to you.
It was, yeah. It was actually really embarrassing. We didn't go out very much after that, me and that girl, so it didn't really work out.
Well, it didn't matter because
Yeah.
you were Danger Slater. Yeah, you only went for dangerous people after that, doing dangerous things. But no, I love that, and I can see how the Danger pen name does extend to your writing. I mean, yeah, it is fearless. I mean, who the hell else is gonna write an entire novella about like a mushroom infected house and all that you've done with Starlet as well. So yeah, it totally works. I want to know, from the year of reading longer books, has that made you want to write a longer book? Because I think you're known for writing novellas and shorter works, but I wondered what that did for you and if it even changed how you approach your sea story.
Um, I don't know if it's made me want to write a longer book, but it did. It did show me something actually very interesting, which is that okay, most books are 300 pages. That's like kind of the like Simon and Schuster, a hardcover. It needs to be 300 pages, or between 250, let's say, and 400. So there's like a little window of like that's how long books are. They're not novellas like the stuff that the Big Five is publishing, and they're not these giant tomes unless you're writing high fantasy or you're already a famous writer who can write giant tomes. So the thing that I learned was that books that are 600 pages or more are usually that long because they need to be that long, right? These are stories that have a lot to them and need that space to breathe. They're not padded. 600-page books aren't padded. 1,000-page books aren't padded. They're that long because they're epics. 300-page books are padded novellas so often. Like, it's because people are going, I have an idea. It's not this gigantic epic idea that could fill a tome. It is basically just an idea that I need to fill 300 pages. So a lot of books that are 300 pages would really do better or read better if they get cut 100 pages from them. So ironically, reading long books made me realize that regular length books are too long. It should be
Yeah,
novellas.
no, I can see that. And I've even known of writers who have told me that, they had to extend a book because their publisher told them to. They told them to
Yeah.
insert more scenes to make it more commercially viable. And I mean, I think as well, we've all read books, as you've said, where we felt this could be tighter. So I wonder how much of that is because of editorial interference, and how much is like, I think some people, like, falsely, they get this perception like, oh, it has to be novel length to be a proper book. Like, they trick themselves into these weird things. Normally, like, starting out writers, I think anyone who's been in the game for long enough doesn't think like that, but it's almost like that societal perception, I think. But yeah, it's
I'm not saying every 300-page book needs to be 150 pages, but I'm just saying, like, I do see it all the time. Exactly what you're saying. It feels, a lot of them feel padded, like so padded. I'm like, just get to the point. Like, I don't know. Like, get to the story. You know what? This is just a personal thing, but I hate, and this is something popular books do, like uh, it, that thing where, like, I feel like the publisher or the agent or whoever, the editor, doesn't trust the audience to get into the story if you don't start with an action scene, like an out of context action scene. Like, here's something that's going to happen, like, and it's only like a few pages, but it'll be like, here's something that's going to happen later in the book or something, and it's like, I don't know, like, start at the beginning. Don't, like, give me, I hate when movies do it too, when they start with like an action scene out of context and they stop and go, oh, I bet you're wondering how I got here. Like, no, like, don't don't do it. Just start at the beginning of wherever the story actually starts. Like, this is just a personal gripe. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's like it's the prologue thing where you have to have a prologue. And here's the thing, I don't have a problem with prologues. I just wish they were more effective.
Yeah.
Like, Let the Right One In has a beautiful prologue that basically is a third person narration from the POV of the little town that they're moving into. And you get to see, like a fly on the wall's view of, you know, Ely and Haken, whoever his name is, moving into their new home at night. And it's not from any other character's point of view. It's from the city. And I think it's actually called The City. And it's a beautiful little piece that really kind of sets the mood and sets the tone. And that's a rarity. You don't see that. And I used to think that gigantic novels were padded because I got into this mode where, like, hey, yeah, a lot of these novels could actually be novellas. And it tempered my feelings of books that I'd read younger and reread. Like classic examples, because I revisited that on the website on my tattered tomes, and I kind of disparaged it. I've read it since then, and I think that every single page in that book matters.
Yeah.
I should probably write another revisit about it because it matters. There's stories within stories that if one of those stories is taken away, it makes the whole book fall apart. And so my opinion of that has changed. Are there padded 1,000-page books? Sure, but it's the scope of the story that makes it. If you have an epic scope, then you need epic length. That sounded really bad, but yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you with it. I read that one during that year for the first time, and
Uh-huh.
I thought that it was one of the best books I've ever read. So yeah, I don't think it's like 1,100 or 1,200 words, pages. I mean, but I don't think there's a wasted word in there.
Yeah, my opinion of it has changed, and I mean it's the thing. My opinion of it's likely to change. I have the right to change my mind, but as of right now, I feel like I gave it a bad rap. 10 years ago or 6 years ago, whenever I last reread it. I'll probably reread it again. It's a great book.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a tremendous pleasure chatting with you as
Yeah.
it was the previous time. So thank you very much for spending so long
Thank
talking
you.
to us. Yeah, but I wonder, where can our listeners connect with you?
I don't know, Instagram or Twitter. I don't know. You know what? If you type Danger Slater into Google, I'm the only one that's going to come up. So pick your social media of choice, and you could follow me at any of those: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or none of them. Just type my name in because it'll also go to my Amazon page where the books are being sold. So
All right. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners and viewers?
no, I don't know. I feel like I've said every word that I know. They're all out. Yeah.
There you go. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you both.